Good evening. I'm Kirk Harriott, Professor of Management, and I hold the Ray and Evelyn Crowley Endowed Chair of Entrepreneurship. And thanks a lot for braving the weather. For some of you, it was tough to try to get here from the parking lot without getting soaked. Maybe not as soaked as Mr. Brasky back there, but certainly some of y'all got a little bit damp tonight. We're very fortunate tonight, as part of our executive speaker series, to have a local entrepreneur join us and talk about his experiences. He has an incredible career, and he's going to share that with you tonight. He has helped start and invested in 8 companies, and he's currently working with some other companies. Mr. Wayne Starks is originally from White House, Tennessee. He earned his Associate of Arts degree from Cumberland University while on a basketball scholarship, and a bachelor's degree in marketing at Middle Tennessee State University. Before settling in Columbus and taking on active roles in local medical staffing and real estate management ventures between Georgia and Alabama, he served as Human Resources Director for various Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. He is involved with a lot of different organizations as a volunteer, a director, a member of the board. He's a current trustee at Cumberland University, past president of the Columbus Personnel Association, past member and chairman of the City of Columbus Personnel Review Board, and past board member of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce. He, as I said before, he has developed and sold a total of 8 companies to date. He's involved with 3 companies at this moment, including SuperCharged. Wave your hand. The founder and CEO is here joining us this evening. It's a new sports drink company headquartered here in Columbus, Georgia, and we are very proud that it is the official drink of Cougar Athletics. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Wayne Starks.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I look at the list of the folks who have spoken to this group and asked Dr. Hadley, why me? You've had some folks like Jimmy Yancey and Phil Tomlinson and so many others. And as Kirk said, I've had an interesting career. I grew up in Tennessee, the metropolis of White House, Tennessee. We had one red light. My brother says it better than I. He said we grew up very modest. That's another way of saying we were very poor. My dad was an entrepreneur. We lived in a house from here to the door behind a little grocery store and service station. He would get up every morning at 6 o'clock. He would get up at 5:15, open the store at 6 o'clock, and he would run the store and close it to 8 to 8:30, 6 days a week. And I just thought that was what you're supposed to do when you had your own business, work 90 hours a week. And the house that we grew up in, we had 4 rooms. And one of them, when we moved into the house, was not a bathroom. We did not have indoor plumbing. I was 8 years old before we got indoor plumbing. And when that happened, we thought we died and gone to heaven. It was a big event. Any athletes in here? A couple athletes? As Kirk pointed out, I was fortunate to go to college on a basketball scholarship. I defied the notion that white men can't jump. I could jump. Athletics was a big part of my life growing up. And I always say that in order to accomplish something, you have to dream it. And I think you have to be a dreamer. If you're a dreamer, become a bigger dreamer. And I always thought, because of my love for athletics, that I was going to be coaching a Duke or a Kentucky or at Auburn and Final Four. Well, when I got out of college, went to work in 1969 teaching and coaching in Gallatin, Tennessee. Anyone like to guess what my salary was a month at that time after going to school for 4+ years? $560 a month. And even in 1969, that was a little tough. That was a little tough. My wife got pregnant with my first child, my daughter, who is here. She had to quit work, and I was teaching and coaching, had to take another job, and I would drive an hour twice a week into Nashville, Tennessee, hour going, hour coming, and unload trucks at a trucking company to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, drive back, get a few hours sleep, get up the next morning and start the routine again. So after doing that for 3 years, I realized that my ticket for success maybe wasn't teaching and coaching. So I decided to go into the business world. And my first job was in human resources with a new company right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. And it was an all-salary plant. Let me repeat that. Because if you're like me, you're thinking, what's the significance of that? All-salary plant. And I had no clue how those 3 words would change my life in my career. Well, was there for a year, and a headhunter called me, and he said, there's a plant in Glasgow, Kentucky, that's a new all-salary plant, and they need someone with that experience. And they offered me more money, chance for more exposure, so I went to Glasgow, Kentucky, worked with a company called Eaton Corporation for 2 years. 2 years later, another headhunter called and said, we're working with a company that's looking to build a plant in Columbus, Georgia, a company called TRW. TRW is a Fortune 100 company, and said it's going to be their first ever all-salary plant, and we can't find anyone with experience. So I went to New York, went to Chicago and interviewed, and they all said the same thing: you're awful young, which they're right. I was 28 years old, and I obviously said the right things, and coupled that with the fact they couldn't find anyone else with all-salary experience, and I ended up in Columbus, Georgia, as human resource manager for that plant. Well, later, I went to stay there several years. Pratt & Whitney came to town. At that time, Pratt & Whitney was the most modern plant when it opened in the United States. A lot of robotics. It's not the case today, but it was then. I always say you never say anything negative about a company that gives you 3 things: food, clothing, and shelter, which Pratt & Whitney gave me, and I'm very appreciative, and I'll never say anything negative about them. But what they inspired me to do was to go in business for myself. So I told them I had this idea, this vision, that I was going to start this staffing company, this temporary company. And they said, great idea, but we can't let you do that, even though you're going to have someone else run it. So I called my old company, met with the president of New York. He said, hey, we'd love to have you back. Hired someone to run that company. And I would go into that office every morning at 5:30, work until 10 minutes to 8, come home in the come back to that office at 5 every afternoon, work till 9 or 10 o'clock, and did that for 19 months, and built up a pretty good staffing business here in Columbus, Georgia. When we expanded into Opelika and Auburn, we opened 4 offices in Tennessee, 5 offices in Atlanta, 2 in Washington State, and 1 in South Carolina. And I had a son was working the business in Atlanta, another son who was a senior at Georgia Southern, about to graduate, and he wanted to come into the business. Well, a company in Dallas, Texas came along and said, we're interested in your company. And I said, hey, not interested in selling. Timing is not right. And so they stayed after me, and finally the guy called one day and he said, Wayne, we've done a lot of due diligence on you, a lot of research, and one thing that we've learned about you is this: you're not a very good listener. He said, we want to buy your company. And I said, well, come to think of it, everything I own other than my family's for sale. So they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, and sold that company. Well, before I sold it, I told you how many offices we had. I think one of the biggest killers for entrepreneurs is ego. Some of my family members and a lot of my friends thought I had lost my mind. I brought in a guy to run the company as president and CEO. And they said, Wayne, why are you doing this? I said, this is your baby. You've nurtured it. You've grown it. Why would you bring in someone else to run the business? Well, the answer was pretty simple for me. I had taken it as far as I could. I had grown it as much as I could. And I wasn't smart enough then to realize what that decision meant to me and my family. He was recognized as a great CEO president. He helped me sell that company quicker than I would have otherwise, and he helped me sell it for more than I would have otherwise if I was still running it. So 4 days before my 50th birthday, I sold the business. And there was a lot of negotiation going on, and this company that bought us out of Dallas, Texas, said, Wayne, everyone we bought, the owners had to stay on for 2 years. And I said, hey, if I'm going to stay on for 2 years, I'm going to own it and I'm going to run it. And so they walked away, I walked away. 2 months later, they called and said, okay, we'll let you stay on for a year. Well, 2 months after I sold, they had a meeting of all the 26 companies in Dallas, Texas that they bought. And the guy that I brought in as president CEO, running all of the offices around the country, was and still is a really bright guy. Today he's running $1 billion company. And I told the president and executive VP at a reception, I said, you guys are paying me a lot of money when I've got Tom over here that can run it. And I said, I'm a man of my word and I'll stay for a year, but you don't need to be paying me the money that you pay me. So Tuesday of that next week, the president and the executive VP called and said, Wayne, were you serious about what you said last week? And I said, absolutely. And they said, well, we discussed it and said, if you're interested in leaving, that's okay. And this was on a Tuesday. And they said, what's a good date? I said, how about Friday? So 3 days later, I packed my stuff and left. And here I was, 50 years old, a lot of energy. I'm a 71-year-old with ADD. Got to be doing something, got to stay active, got to be busy. And so a guy who was on my board was speaking to a group of temporary staffing owners in New Orleans, Louisiana. And this lady came up to him afterwards and said, hey, I've got this very successful staffing company, and I've got this redheaded stepchild over here of a medical staffing company. He said, can you help me sell it? He said, yeah, I think so. So he called me and he said, Wayne, why don't you and I buy it? And he and I had been friends. He served on my board, and I said, gee, Mike, I said, if you're looking for someone that wants to work 14, 15 hours a day again, you're wasting your time. And he said, well, I know the answer to that. So we bought it. In all our wisdom, we had a 5-year plan to build it up, put a ribbon around it, and sell it. Well, that 5-year plan turned into 18 years. And we sold it 22 months ago. But the fact it took us longer turned out to be a blessing, because we grew that. When we sold it, we were in 46 states. And what we would do, we would bring in nurses and physical therapists from India, Philippines, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and we put them in hospitals and nursing homes around the country. So 22 months ago, we sold that business. Before that, a couple of years before that, my son and I had a business in Atlanta. It was the largest internet real estate company in the United States. And we sold it to a private equity out of San Francisco. And one of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is people that help us get to the finish line, people that have worked with us. We try to make them a part of the transaction. So what we did, we had brought in multiple programmers from Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State, and most of these young people, your ages, first job, we were hiring them at $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. They were thrilled, we were thrilled. And when we would bring them in, we'd say, Nick, you've got some stock options. But it doesn't mean anything, because we're a privately held company, and the only way it'll ever mean anything to you is we sell the company. So this outfit from San Francisco, private equity, came and wanted to buy us, and we sold to them. So we would bring these employees in and say, you remember when you were hired, we told you had some stock options? And they said, yeah, vaguely I do remember it, but I didn't understand it. What does it mean? Well, as it turns out, we sold that company, and we made 7 of those people millionaires or multimillionaires. 37 of those employees, we made 100,000-aires. 37 of the employees got from $100,000 to $906,000. And you can imagine, you've never seen as many tears at a funeral home when we told these folks that. And I don't know about you, but when I was your age and their age, I couldn't handle money like that. So we brought in advisors to help them invest the money, pay off student loans, buy a condo, buy a house, pay off cars. And so it was a great story to be able to help folks there. As Kurt mentioned, I've been involved with other ventures in real estate, involved in a couple in Atlanta right now, involved in SuperCharged. Many of you have heard some of Nick's story, and he will talk here in a minute. But some of the life lessons that I've learned being a manager and entrepreneur, they're pretty basic. But I've learned that it's not about you. It's not about you. My first job after teaching and coaching, I had a boss. We'd go on a business trip or we'd go to a social function, and he would introduce me. He said, "This is Wayne. He works for me. This is Wayne Starks. He reports to me." And that was his way of building himself up. And I thought, if I'm ever in a situation like that, I will never, ever introduce someone like that. So I've never had anyone to work for me, but I've had a lot of wonderful people to work with me. And I think that's very important as you get out into the business world and you become a manager, you become an entrepreneur. It's not about you. Very important. There was a young man who was in his second year in college many years ago, and the professor gave a pop quiz. And one of the questions that he asked, what is the name, so this is a bonus question, what is the name of the lady who cleans our building here? And this guy thought, this has got to be a trick question. This is not for real. So he goes up and asks the professor, said, is this for real? Is this going to count? And the professor said, absolutely. Said, you're going to encounter a lot of people in your life that can do more for you than you can do for them. Learn their name, because their name is music to their ears. And he said, oh, by the way, her name was Dorothy. But learn other people's name that perhaps can do more for you than you can do for them. One of the things we used to do, working in human resources for Fortune 100, 500 companies, if someone would come in and interview, and you go on an interview, you put your best foot forward, right? Well, what we would do after they left, we would ask the receptionist, how was this person? How was this man? How was this woman? Did they treat you with respect? Were they polite? And many times we found out that they were very rude. And she'd say, golly gee, I hope y'all don't hire that individual, because they're not our type of people. So it's important to be nice to everyone, because again, some people can do more for you than you can ever do for them. There's a story of this was in the 60s. A young white man was traveling in Alabama, rural Alabama. It was a rainy night, much like here probably tonight. And it was a country road, and he sees this older black lady broken down on the side of the road. And he's thinking, should I stop and help? Is this a setup, or are they going to rob me? So he went by her, turned around, came back, and helped her, took her to some place that she could get some help. And before she left him, she thanked him and said, can I get your name and phone number and address? And he said, sure. 2 weeks later, he gets a giant console color TV delivered to his home. And he had this note. It says, thank you so much for assisting me on the highway the other night. The rain drenched not only my clothes, but also my spirits. Then you came along. Because of you, I was able to make it to my dying husband's bedside just before he passed away. God bless you for helping me and unselfishly serving others. Some of you won't recognize this name because you're too young, but it was signed Mrs. Nat King Cole. So you never know whose path you're going to cross and what they can do for you. One of the things I tell my children and grandchildren is that you don't measure life by number of years. You don't measure life by duration. You measure life by donation. And one of the things that you should start doing at an early age is to give. And when you mention give, immediately it turns to money. And I contend there's three T's to giving. Your time, we all have the same amount of time. Talents, I'm the only person that's ever been asked not to come back to a church choir before. And treasures, which is your money. And learn to give at an early age, because the thing I've found that the happiest people are those who give money and serve. I've always said I've never had but one original idea in my life, and everything else I've stolen or borrowed from someone else. And some of these I borrowed from Bill Gates and others. And one is, life is not fair. Deal with it. Two, if you think your teacher is tough, wait till you get a boss. He or she probably doesn't have tenure. Your school may have done away with winners and losers, but life has not. Life is not divided into semesters. You don't get summers off, and very few employers are interested in helping you find yourself. Be nice to nerds, because chances are one day you're going to be working for one. Questions?
So I thought it was interesting that you said earlier that you knew that you took in the company as far as it can go. What was like that thing that told you, I'm done, I got to bring someone else in to take it to like a phase 2 or take it to the next level?
Great question. Was interviewed several years ago about with a magazine, and they asked about some of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur. And one is, I think ego is one of the biggest killers, not only for entrepreneurs, but for managers. You have to admit you don't know what you don't know. And it was very hard for me to, after I'd started this business, after I'd grown it, we were from Washington State to Tennessee to Atlanta to South Carolina, to say, hey, you know, this is as far as I can take it. And so I brought this guy in, and again, two things. He helped me sell it quicker than I would have otherwise, and he helped me get more money than I would have otherwise. You know, I could have faked it along and grown it and sustained it and been okay, but he was a godsend for me. Good question. Others?
It sounds like you've worked in a lot of different industries and fields, obviously, throughout your history. And would you say that it's more about empowering the people that work for you and those around you versus industry knowledge itself?
No question. Great question. I think more so for people in this age group, because what's happened, you folks have forced, like for a better term, employers and companies to give you more than my generation. You know, my generation, you come to work, you show up, and you do as you're told, and you don't rock any boats. And companies have learned that by empowering all employees and encouraging them to rock boats, not only does it help you grow as an individual, but it helps the company grow. It makes them better. And again, some managers are not confident enough, self-assured enough. Their egos will not allow them to do that. But it's absolutely, I think, essential today for the people in this room.
I have a question for you. Some might say that you have had tremendous success as an entrepreneur, and that when you sold your first company, many people would have just retired early at that point. But at your age, you're continuing to invest in businesses and continuing to work. Tell us what drives you at this point, because clearly it's not because you want, you need the money.
Did my wife ask you I've answered that question to my wife more than once. And I tell her, and I think she finally, after several years, believes me, which she didn't initially. And I tell her, it's not about the money. It really isn't. It's about the challenge. And I think when you get to be 71 years old, you admit to yourself that you have ADD, and you've got to challenge yourself mentally when you get older. You have to challenge yourself physically. And, I've had too many friends to say, God, I cannot wait to retire. They retire at 60 or 62, and they die when they're 65 or 66. And you have to have, I think everyone has to have a purpose. You have to have a reason to get up in the morning. And it's about, seeing things finished. It's about getting involved with a new company like SuperCharged and, that breath of fresh air that you get. But it's different strokes for different folks.
What was that name of that company where the 5 years turned to 18 years?
I'm sorry?
What was the name of that company where the 5 years turned to 18 years?
My first staffing company was a company called Temporary Alternatives. And some of you that have been in Columbus for a period of time, we sold it, 22 and a half years ago. 22 years ago. And then the medical company we sold, and we were in 46 of 50 states, a company called Metro. And I've shared this story with Nick and others. 3 years before we sold it, 4 years before we sold it, we had a buyer. And they had done their due diligence. We agreed on price. We were going to close on December the 30th. We were going to close on January the 2nd. On December the 30th, they contacted us and they backed out. And we were devastated. We said, golly gee, here we are. We had set this up. We were ready to have a payday, and they back out. Well, as I said earlier, God works in mysterious ways. And, what we could have sold it for then was about 50% of what we sold it for 4 years later. So we got over that disappointment.
In our careers, we always looking for our success and really don't want to embrace failures. But looking back on your career and your life, do you value those failures more than you do the success you experience?
Do you value what?
Do you value those failures?
Oh, absolutely. As I said earlier, I enjoy reading about successful people. I enjoy reading about successful companies. And as Kirk mentioned, on the board of the University of Tennessee, and the president asked me a couple months ago, he said, golly, Wayne, he said, has every company you've been involved with, has it been a success? And I said, Lord, no. I said, people will talk about their successes, but I had more than my share of failures. And I contend to my employees that work with me, not for me, that it's okay to fail. We're going to have some failures. And it's not a dumb mistake unless we make it twice. Then you and I are going to talk. Don't make the same mistake twice. And I've made more than my share. And some of them have been very expensive mistakes. It's cost me a lot of money. But you can't, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're a manager, you're an employee, you can't worry about failure. I say the only people that don't make mistakes are people not doing anything. If you're working, you're doing something, you're going to make mistakes. That's just reality. And I'm not saying embrace mistakes, but accept them and learn from them. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
How have you dealt with criticism over the years?
Probably better today than I did 30 years ago. If somebody says something about your family or you or your business, you take that personal. And, you learn to have strong shoulders. And sometimes you have to smile and grin and bear it and walk away. But, I handle criticism, as my wife will, I'm sure, tell you, a lot better today than I did 30, 40 years ago. A good entrepreneur, just like a good manager, is a good salesperson. You have to be a good marketeer. And to be a successful entrepreneur, I think you have to sell your vision to people who work with you. Get them to embrace and buy in to your vision. And if you're successful in doing that, that's a lot of the battle. You got enough money, that's a lot of the battle. Great questions. Nick, I got good news and bad news.
What's that?
The bad news, I've taken up most of your time. But this guy has got a great story. He's one of my heroes. Nick and I met a little over a year ago, almost a year ago. And going back to an earlier question about why do you keep doing this? My response to Nick was, Nick, I don't need this. I don't have to have this. But you're onto something, partner. You're really onto something. And you've got a great opportunity here. So as I've said to my wife and my family, I've been very, very lucky and have sold 8 businesses. And the word potential is a big word. But if the stars, the moons, and the planets line up, SuperCharged can be the biggest thing I've ever been a part of. And a lot of the credit is this guy right here. Nick?
Thank you, Wayne. What an awesome, great leader and mentor he's been for me. Definitely, I want to just say I thank you for that, Wayne. So he only gave me about 10 minutes, so I'll try to wrap this up pretty quick. He might have done that, intentional, but a little bit about my story goes back, like Wayne said. I was born and raised in western North Carolina. It's called Andrews, a little small town, one red light, like you said. I went to school there through kindergarten, through middle school, 1 year of middle school, ended up moving to Columbus. And then coming back to Andrews, North Carolina, where I met my high school sweetheart, Amanda. We've been married for 13 years, so we got married really young and stayed together and just had our first child, and I'll get into that in just a second, how the story goes. But, we both moved here. We were 20 years old. She started at Aflac. I started at the Columbus Waterworks. I started as an apprentice, very bottom level job, didn't know what I expected when I got there. So Columbus Waterworks, is water and wastewater. Well, I'm young, they stick me right on the wastewater side. So I'm digging ditches and playing in stuff that you really don't want to play in, but somebody had to do it. I knew though there at that point that, I wanted to move up and do different things. Well, where my passion and my drive comes from for starting SuperCharged was I was a big Michael Jordan fan. I mean, he was my idol back in the day. I played basketball, but I was terrible. I'm not like Wayne and got a scholarship, and I definitely can't jump. But Michael Jordan, this goes back to where he was drinking Gatorade on TV. I used to think he owned this brand. Practically he did. He was the face of it. And I said, man, how cool would it be to have my own drink? I didn't know what it'd be. I was a young kid, but it stayed in my mind, and I would bring it up year after year. Like, oh, that's really cool for your families and things like that. Well, it stayed with me for a very long time. I ended up moving to Columbus, Georgia, where I started my career at the Waterworks, like I just said a minute ago. My wife started at Aflac, and my wife was 6 months pregnant. I knew I kept wanting to do this. She was 6 months pregnant with our daughter, Summer. I sat in the middle of the night one night, and I said, I got to do this. Almost 2 a.m., freaked her out. She said, what? And I told her about the drink. She said, can we talk about this tomorrow? And of course we did, but I never looked back. I never looked back from that point. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to create a drink. A better for you drink, a good drink, a drink with taste, low calories, low sugar. I knew things like that I wanted to do, but I didn't know what to do. So Google was my best friend. I Googled, found a company out there that I thought that was good, that helped me kind of develop this brand. I went through several of them, but I'm making a long story short. It ended up being Power Brands out of Van Nuys, California. And I called the lady up. Her name was Connie. She was real nice to me on the phone and everything like this. I told her what I wanted to do. I said, well, look, I got this envision to make a sports drink better for you, but like a hybrid drink. I kept telling them, I want this to be like a gas car and electric car. I want the best of both worlds. I want everything to be good in this. And she was like, okay, I don't really know how we were going to do that, but my background was water, so I had that down. I on the chemistry side of it. So she sends me a proposal back. When I get the proposal back, it's got a number about this long what they wanted me to pay them. I'd never seen, I called them up and I said, look, you got to be mistaken. There's no way you want me to pay this much money. Do you know what I do? So at that point, I had no idea what to do except for go to family and friends to start with. Every family and friend told me, Nick, your wife's pregnant. You got a great job. You got insurance. Your wife does. She works at Athletics. She's got insurance. Don't do this. Over and over. And it would weigh on me like, am I doing the right thing? And my drive and my passion wouldn't let me stop. So I made a business plan, made this business plan in 1 week, baby. I thought it was great. And so I go to big banks, as far as like Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Any of y'all bank with them, I'm sorry. But, I figured if I went to a big bank, why would a big bank tell me no? I got this great idea. I got this right here. So I went to 4 banks. Every one of them told me no. One told me it's the worst business plan they'd ever seen. Absolutely. Said it was horrible. I said, well, I worked on this all week. Are you kidding me? So I leave there and I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I have no idea. What do I do? So I just started saving. This whole development process took me 3 years. Most companies, Gatorade can make a new flavor in 15 minutes. All these big companies can do stuff very quickly. Like he said, capitalized companies can do a whole lot of things that you can't do. The only thing I knew to do was save. We didn't go out on Friday nights no more. We didn't go eat pizza. We scraped, and I trying to tell my wife that this is what I wanted to do. I was crazy to her at the beginning, but one was, she was pregnant, and 2 was, it's just like, hey, why type things in the very beginning. So basically I save up enough after several years, a couple of years, I save up enough I was able to get the formulation and come up with our flavoring. So I worked at Columbus Waterworks, had a very diverse workforce, like I said. So I got some of the team members, 12 team members to be exact. It ranged from African American, white, female, Asian, and Hispanic. I knew that if I liked this drink, that didn't mean nothing. I needed everybody to like this drink. I needed to sell the northeast, south, and west side of all towns. So that's how we did it. I would have a cup. At the very bottom of a cup, I would put a mark where only you could see it with a mini black light. I'd take labels off of orange Gatorade, Kickstart Mountain Dew, whatever. We just had all kinds of different. That's how we came up with these flavors. And 11 out of the 12 liked our flavors better than the ones we were comparing to. I knew we were onto something. So I'm super excited. I send it, I tell her we've got it. She's like, okay. She's like, well, you got to put a package on this. I'm like, it don't come with this? This is separate. So I'm back to ground zero again. Got to start completely over. I do it again, save up, and I get that going. Well, once we have the packaging and we have the flavor in the bottle here, she's like, well, now you got to get a bottle. My whole envision that they were going to make this in this lab about as big as this desk right here, And so they give me some bottlers to contact. And this is a hot fill product, so no preservatives, good for you. So it's boiled when it's made. And I call up the bottlers. Well, the first 2 I didn't really like. They were terrible to talk to on the phone. Like I said, they were not a team player. They were nothing. They were the boss, like Wayne said, for sure. Well, the third one I called up, he listened to me. Jeremy listened to me, and he's like, well, Nick, I said, I want to run 10,000 bottles. He said, why 10? I said, well, it sounds great. It's a good number. I don't even have a clue what it's going to cost. And he said, Nick, we run 10,000 bottles a minute. I said, well, that sounds easy for you then. And he said, well, I can't do this for you. So what did I do? I said, okay. Call back the next day. Talked to him again. About the third or fourth time, they started blocking my calls. They started blocking everything. So I called from different numbers. I had to be clever too, because I thought that this guy would give me a chance if I could ever really tell him the story and the things that I went through. And finally, he wouldn't take it. So I said, shoot, I got to take off work. Meanwhile, I'm working full-time at the Columbus Waterworks. We launched April 2017. I didn't go full-time until January 2018. So I go down there and I show up. I got a bag in this hand and a cooler in this hand. I sneak past security. I'm not kidding. So he's talking to a big truck checking in, and I'm like, all right, well, now's my chance. This little guy at a guard shop, let me just go around. So I go around this 18-wheeler and park. And I walk in the front door, and they said, well, who are you? Who are you here to see? I said, Jeremy. They said, well, are you expecting you? I said, no, tell us Nick was SuperCharged. He'll know me. And so he comes out, and his face turns as red as an apple. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, well, look, I figured if I came down here and took a couple of days and I stayed and I worked the line, then you would do something for me. I had a sleeping bag in this hand and I had a cooler in this hand. And he brings me back to his office and he said, well, you know, Nick, I can't let you work it out here. He said, but I'm going to see what I can do for you. I said, well, I'll tell you what. If you'll run this run for me and let me pay you on some terms, I'll pay you back plus 10%. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it. Well, in the meantime, I'd rented a storage building, okay? Little action building, not knowing how many cases would come or what that would require. And when I seen these things coming off on pallets, I had to revamp again and go find somewhere to store this stuff. So we got the product, we get it here, I pay him back. That was the first bottler in Dade City, Florida. And so we start selling. April 1st of 2017, we do online only. We built up a good social media following before that through a lady that's been a dear friend of mine that helped me for no money in the very beginning. And we built it and had a little bit of a following. And so online only on Saturday, April 2017, and we did $4,995.32. I'll never forget that number. Great number. Day 2, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 4, I'm like, what's going on? You know, like, you know, where we at? So the only thing I knew next to do was go door to door. I went door to door. I went stores, homes. I didn't care where I went. I did. It was Wednesday when I started doing that. Of the following Saturday, our president, Steve Davis at Columbus Waterworks, called work off because real bad weather. Well, I couldn't let that stop me. First store I went to was J&J in Catala, Georgia. Took them in, cold samples. We only had 2 flavors at the time, blood orange and strawberry kiwi. She said, I love it. I'll take some. I'm like, all right, cool. Move to the next one, same thing. Get to the third one, it's a Chevron. And she said, Nick, we love the product, but we don't have any room. Coke owns this, Pepsi owns this. I said, what do you mean they own it? This is your store. They pay for this space. You know, they have all this right here. She said, but if I had room, then we would let you get on the shelf. I said, well, that's all she left me right there. I went to Walmart, bought the cheapest Igloo cooler I could buy, went home and slapped SuperCharged posters all over it, built a stand in my backyard and walked back through the front door. The lady couldn't help but let me put it in there then. You know, that's crazy. So get it in there, we start selling. All of a sudden, within a week, she puts us on the shelf. So I knew that there was something there. So I say that to say, you know, keep pushing, keep trying. After that, I ended up going to several stores. At this time, I'm completely broke. I'm telling you, like, broke. There's no room on a credit card. There's nothing. We're running on fumes, you know, fumes. And I never showed that or never took that home with me either. And so distributors ended up calling. I won't name the names, the ones I didn't go with, but they would bring me and sit me down and say, hey, Nick, we would love to carry your product. You know, we need you to sign this. Well, it was about this thick. I didn't even know what the first sentence meant. It was a contract. So I knew I wasn't. I humbly declined. Till about a few weeks into it, a guy named Lee Jackson gives me a text message, and it was from the first store I go to. He goes to that same store and lives close to where I do. And he sends me a text, says, I love your product, love to meet with you. I'm like, oh gosh, who's this guy? Another guy wants me to do this. I think I'm doing pretty good, even though I'm completely broke. I go meet with him. Well, he meets me and greets me at the front door, takes me into his office, asks me about my family, asks me how I'm doing, asks me everything other than what these other guys asked me. You know, this was a team. This was a guy. This is somebody, my gut said do business immediately, because you could just tell I wasn't used to that. So I'm sitting in there and he said, Nick, I'd love to carry your product for you. And I said, well, great. He said, I want you to go shop it around some, see if anybody. I said, no, I'd love to do something with you. He said, all right, I want to buy what you got. All of it? He said, all of it. I said, all of it? All of it. Went back and forth, couldn't believe it. He said, matter of fact, I want to buy your next 5,000 cases, and here's your check. You know, and I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, don't cry in front of this man, you know. He's 60-something years old, like I'm overwhelmed with emotion. So I get it on my car and my truck, and I definitely completely lose it then. But they started delivering, you know, my product in May of 2017, probably May or June, and I've been delivering it ever since. And we've grown the company to, I was the first employee in January worked my full-time job, and as Wayne said, it was literally 16, 17 hours a day. I'd get up at 4, go get orders, deliver on my lunch break, after work, whatever it took. I did whatever it took to do this because I truly believed in it. And we started hiring. I was the first one, then we hired somebody else, and to now we have about 10 employees. We're in, as Wayne mentioned, Tennessee, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Alabama, lots of new areas that we're launching. We're in Publix, like you said, Walmart, and all those different things. And we have a strong team now. I learned too, like Wayne, and I thank him that he came along to help and believed in this, because we've taken it, we've taken it to another level. We truly have. And it's the support and the people that you hire that really help you do that. I know exactly what I'm good at, and I'm not good at a lot of things. I truly am not. So what I'm not good at, that's what we hire around and get people to surround. Everything's a team thing. Nobody works for me, as he said too. I truly believe in that. No one does that. This is all a team, and at the end, we all want the same result. We want to get on shelves. We want to, we want to move this product. So, that's a little bit about my story. I know I probably went over a couple of minutes and I made it really short, but I'm truly glad and humbled to be here. I definitely have a schedule, like you said, he named a few that's out of this world, but Columbus is very dear to me. This is where it started. We give back any way we can, through time, through donations, whatever we can do to where we're the sports strength of Cougar Athletics, and we definitely thank that. So I'll take any questions. I really appreciate your time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.